Presenting the Sensei way to resolve conflict. This is O Sensei Morihei Ueshiba. He once said, "Those who are skilled in combat do not become angered. Those who are skilled at winning do not become afraid. Thus, the wise win before the fight, while the ignorant fight to win." He founded Aikido, one of the newest martial art forms. This is Terry Dobson. He and Victor Miller wrote a book, Aikido in Everyday Life, Giving In to Get Your Way. It outlines the Aikido method, or at least their interpretation of the Aikido method of resolving conflicts. The underlying philosophy of the book is fourfold. First, there is nothing wrong with winning, provided that what you are winning is a contest. Stop seeing everything as a contest, which by definition must have a winner and a loser. Not every contest is a zero-sum game, which requires a winner and a loser. And finally, conflict simply is. Here's a who's who in the world of conflict. First are the magnifiers. They only have an on-off switch. They're the ones who go from 0 to 60 in 5 seconds or less. They also see all conflicts as equal, whether it's a parking space or being attacked in a mugging. And they also have no sense of priority. They will fight wherever, whenever. Next, we have the misperceivers, those who seek conflict where there is none. I once knew someone who did see conflict where there was none. He wanted to be right about everything. So people just didn't like hanging around him. No matter what the topic was, he would argue it, even if he didn't know what he was talking about. The second type is those who read conflict incorrectly and fight about something other than what the fight is really about. I can give an example from my own life. My wife and I used to spat a lot when I was working still, and normally it would be about something that happened to me at work. It was rarely about something she had done. When I'd start up, she'd say, "Okay, what's this all about?" And then I'd think back and say, "Oh, I had a bad day at work." Or someone else at work was getting in my way. Next, we have the failed perceivers. Those are the people who don't see conflict when it exists. Sadly, so many people in abusive relationships are in exactly that position. And then finally, we have conflict avoiders. Not mentioned in the Aikido book, they exist. They are the people that withdraw altogether or surrender to the attack. Here are the Aikido rules for perceiving conflict. The first is the rules for conflict perception. Number 1, you take the past into consideration. What is the history between you and your opponent? What is your relationship with them? 2, be on the lookout for questions which are really statements. We've all experienced this. Your mother or father says, "Why can't you be like your sibling?" is really saying, "I want you to be more like your sibling." The third point is observe the person's face, especially the eyes, their manner, breathing, posture, etc. You know when they're really serious, when their head's down and they're facing you directly. Fourth, listen carefully to what is being said, and just as important, to what is not being said. When dealing with conflict, remember these things. Don't see all conflicts as equally threatening. You don't want to overextend yourself in a conflict and get into more trouble than you really are. 2. See conflicts for what they are, not for what they may appear to be. 3. See conflict when it is there. If you're always seeing the world through rose-colored spectacles, you're not going to know when people are attacking you. Here are the options for conflict resolution. First is fighting back, but you only do it when it is a question of life and death and when there are no other options available. Second option is withdrawal. Third is parley, which is just a fancy way of saying talking. Fourth, doing nothing. Fifth, deception. And sixth is the heart of Aikido, which is Ikey, which roughly translates as confluence. When to fight back. In other words, choose your battles wisely. You fight back when there are no other options. When withdrawal, parley, deception, or confluence didn't work. When it is a question of life or death. Recently, we have seen so many people getting killed or seriously injured because somebody perceives a parking space issue as a question of life or death and they use deadly force. And then you also fight back when it is a question of serious priority which directly affects your life. That means perceiving conflict correctly. The number one principle for fighting back is the best victory is the one in which everybody wins. And here is a point to make. You have the right to life, and the entire universe sanctions your right to preserve it. 2. You never fight back against someone who has nothing to lose. 3. Use the minimum force necessary to restore harmony, for harmony is the goal of conflict resolution. 4. You must never extend your counterattack beyond the possibility of return. Again, the example can easily be those people who pull out a gun and kill someone over a parking space, or they fight brutally over some sort of gift that they want to give somebody at Christmas. That is overextending your counterattack. 5. Don't fight back if you don't have to. You must estimate the situation. As we mentioned earlier, the relationship. What is your past relationship with the person? Are they your boss, a co-worker, sibling, spouse? Or is it some stranger on the street? What if it's somebody at a store that you're arguing with? Take that into consideration. 2, you must estimate the place. Nobody wants to be chewed out by their boss in the lobby of the office building that they're working in. That is not the place for the conflict. That is not the place to be reamed out by somebody who has an issue with you at your job. 3, the time and timing. Is the time appropriate for a conflict? Once again, you don't want to be chewed out in front of your coworkers or even strangers in the lobby of the office building that you work in. And is the timing right for the conflict? Are you just leaving work and somebody's coming at you for something? Or are you just arriving at work and someone's coming after you? These are very important things. And then finally, number 4, the spirit of the attack. And remember, as they say in the book, every vanquished foe is a potential adversary. You must pay attention to your body language, and here are some pointers. Stand with one foot slightly forward. Have a straight back. Keep your eyes forward. Make your expression as neutral as possible, because that will also help center you. Keep your posture consistent with your approach. If you're relaxed, but still able to deflect your opponent, you know that your posture will reflect that. And they also say, know how to use your space to maximize your chances for harmony. There are 3 stages to a fight. 1 is immobilization, in which you're stopping the attack. 2 is control. You lead your opponent to see things your way, or you lead your opponent away from your physical space so that they're no longer attacking you. 3 is the restoration of harmony, in which it's a win-win situation. And it is the goal of all conflict. They let you know to always maintain your balance, emotional and physical. Keep advancing your argument with clear intention. In other words, solve the problem at hand. Here's the first of your conflict options, other than fighting back. First is withdrawal. It is appropriate when all else fails and an escape route is open to you. It is appropriate when the time and place for conflict are wrong. Once again, when your boss corners you or a co-worker corners you in a public space, or when you're arguing with your spouse in the shopping mall. Those are not the time or place for a conflict. It allows you time for you and your opponent to cool off. It is not value-laden. You are moving to a place of safety. This is very important about withdrawal. It is not retreat or surrender. And it must be done with clear intent and be decisive. Notice that the little green triangles in this image are all facing one direction. That means the people who are being attacked know where they are withdrawing to. Number 2 is parley. Parley is most effective when you are involved in a no-win situation. Here are the rules of parley. You need to have 2 parlayers, or 2 people who are willing to talk. And 2, keep your mind simple and don't get caught up in side issues. Stay balanced, don't play games, and focus on the problem, not the opponent. Don't worry about your ego, it'll be fine. Of all the little bits of information or tips in this book, this one I find is very important. Don't worry about your ego, it'll be fine. How to parley. Rule 1. Parley requires 2 circles after your initial exchange. People willing to parley are rounded. They are willing to understand things in a different way. Be willing to see both sides. Compromise if you can. Make it a win-win situation. You and your boss don't want the company to fail. You and your boss want you both to succeed. Therefore, parley. Talk it out. Talk things out before anything else. The next conflict option is doing nothing. Doing nothing is appropriate when you need time. Doing nothing is an appropriate response when you want to find out what's really going on behind the attack. Doing nothing is one of the best responses of all when attack makes no sense, when it is totally absurd. It is not the same as being passive or surrendering to the attack. Often, the attacker will fizzle out after the initial emotions are spent. Once that is over, focus on the problem again. Deception is the next conflict option. There are 2 basic forms. First is diversion. It's putting up a smokescreen, like changing the subject. Here's an example. Your boss comes at you waving a report in your face and saying, I don't like what you did with this report. You are so incompetent. You are a fool, whatever they say. But you know, through gossip, that your boss has a relative who's in the ICU. Putting up a smoke screen can be like this. Oh, I hear that your cousin is in the ICU. I hope they're doing better today than yesterday. That's the smoke screen. That's changing the subject. But it's not being angry towards the boss. It's empathizing with them. The second form is deflection. It's the white lie. Let's use this example again. Your boss comes at you, waving that report in your face, angry that you've done something that they think is stupid. Well, look at your cell phone, check it, and say, I'm sorry, but I've got an important meeting. We can talk about this later. Can we set up another time with which to discuss this? Your boss may not know it, but you have a meeting. You have an appointment. It might be just coffee with a friend of yours. But that's the white lie. When to use deception is when the time and place are wrong for conflict and you need time to sort out a proper response. That report your boss is waving in your face, you need time to figure out why they think it's wrong. And you use it when to surprise an opponent, when you want to surprise an opponent. That diversionary tactic surprises people. It throws them off guard. That's the pause you need. How to use deception? Well, invent stories which have a grain of truth. That meeting example is absolutely perfect. The meeting might be for tomorrow. It might be for an hour from now. But your boss might know it, not know it. It's a bit of deception. But when they come back at you and say, oh, you didn't have that meeting at that time, you can counter with, oh, I'm sorry, I got my plans mixed up. Here are the conflict options so far. Withdrawal, parley, doing nothing, and deception. These are independent, but be prepared to mix them or switch them if needed. When you find that withdrawal doesn't work and they're still coming at you, try and parley with them. If they don't want to parley and they're still attacking you, do nothing. But if they're still attacking you, switch to deception. In any event, these are interdependent or independent. It depends on the situation. Use them and switch them when necessary. All of these options involve centering. You stay balanced emotionally, spiritually, and physically if possible. And they involve Ikey. The phrase is, be the water, not the rock. Ikey is seeing your opponent's perspective even just for a minute. Ikey is accepting the attack and turning with it. When they go after you, accept it and turn with it. If their momentum is such that it takes them past where you are, either emotionally or factually, when you turn with it, you are now facing their direction. So that you both can focus on the problem at hand. Turn too early and your opponent will change direction. Timing is everything. If they see where you're going with your response, they will be able to counter it by continuing their attack. Turn too late and your opponent will succeed in the attack. Again, timing is everything. Ikey is comprised of two parts, confluence and lead. It is the most effective response to conflict, and it can be used to deal with any attack at any time and any place. The nice thing about sincere, focused attacks is, as they say in the book, they are so clearly committed to destroying you that they develop their own momentum and energy. That momentum will carry them past you if you roll or turn at the right moment. They also say Ikey is composed of two basic actions. Confluence, joining with the attack to empathize with the attacker and get out of the way. And lead, bringing the attacker back to balance. Again, they say Ikey can be used to deal with any attack at any time and any place. And the goal is to get them back to balance. The rules for Ikey are as follows. Turn in the same direction as the attacker. Empathize with them. You are engaging in a relationship with the person who isn't trying to attack you. 2. Accept the attack in a centered position. Turn from your center, harmonize and redirect the attack. When the attacker loses their balance, at that precise moment the defender is in charge and must take care of the attacker, helping him or her to a newer, firmer, less aggressive balance. And 3, when the moment of new balance comes, take care of your attacker, lead them to harmony. Rules for confluence are the following. Acknowledge your opponent's feelings and opinions and the right to those feelings and opinions. 2, begin with what they are saying, not what you think they are saying. Be like a mirror and reflect their feelings and opinions accurately back to them. Acknowledge their position. Ask if you have got it right if you think you may not. From the book, they say every attacker has a right to his feelings. They may be based on an incorrect deduction from the facts, but the attacker is still feeling them. You cannot lead him to a correct perception without first becoming confluent with the perception he or she is experiencing. You don't have to agree with your opponent. Just recognize they are there and have a legitimate problem with you or your ideas. Respect them. And importantly, listen for the inevitable pause in their attack, then lead. Here are the rules for leading. Redirect the focus of the attacker away from you after the initial pause. They have a problem. You are getting in the way of them solving it. Therefore, number 2, focus on what the attacker needs. 3, don't take the attack personally if it really isn't. This objectifies the conflict and lets you both see the conflict more clearly. This allows you both to focus on the real problem. That report your boss is flinging in your face, shaking it in your face rather, that is what they're upset with. They're probably not upset with you. The pause means your opponent is off balance in processing what has just happened. 4, if your opponent is still determined to attack after this, employ whatever tactic, withdrawal, parley, doing nothing, deception, gives you the pause you need, then return to leading them. The overall goal is restoring harmony and disarming your opponent's attack. You are not defeating them, merely giving them the chance to see things in a new way. Ikey and the circular attack. Circular attacks are those you can't see coming. They are designed to confuse or deceive the opponent and can buy time for the attacker. It's like the boss who is talking to you about those workers. Don't you just dislike those workers who are always getting the reports in too late? That may be the beginning of a circular attack. He may want to direct it at you. Then there are circular attacks designed to deceive, like wolf packs circling their prey. It usually involves more than one person coming at you from more than one direction. It's like being ambushed. Then there are circular attacks designed to confuse. This is when aggressors send out conflicting signals to the real target of the attack. Again, I'll use the example of the boss who talks to an employee about those workers who are lazy or incompetent, then denies to the employee that the discussion is really about them. That's a circular attack designed to confuse and disarm the real object of the attack. Then there are circular attacks designed to buy time. This is when aggressors send out conflicting signals to the real target of the attack, like when they're talking about that person in the office who is always gossiping, who is always spending so much time at the water cooler and not getting to their work. You might be guilty of it yourself, but they're directing the attack first to all to you. The attack puts the real target off balance so that another more devastating attack can be planned for later. The attacker makes it look like a retreat, or that the real target is someone else. For instance, gossip about a third party, whether it be a family member, a co-worker, someone on the baseball team or the basketball team, anywhere. These circular attacks are designed to buy the attacker time so that they can come back at you later. The shapes of conflict are threefold, three different basic shapes. The first is to fight back or withdraw. That's the triangle. The direction the triangle is moving or pointing to is where you are going. The square is doing nothing. And the circle is deception, parley, and Ikey, because it means that you are flowing with the attack. You are thinking about where the attack is coming from. When you're centered, these shapes work in your favor. Being off center makes things chaotic and you become unfocused. As you can see in these diagrams, fighting back or withdrawing when you're off center, you're going all different directions at once. Doing nothing but still trying to figure out things when you're off center, you become unfocused. Deception, parley, and Ikey, if you're not truly centering, then the circle becomes spike ball. Centering yourself brings back focus and clarity. Remember the rules for confluence. Acknowledge your opponent's feelings and opinions and their right to those feelings and opinions. Begin with what they are saying, not what you think they are saying. You don't have to agree with your opponent, just recognize they are there and have a legitimate problem with you and your ideas. Respect them. 3, listen for the inevitable pause, then lead. Rules for leading. Be the water, not the rock. Redirect the focus of the attacker away from you after the initial pause. Focus on what the attacker needs. Don't take the attack personally if it really isn't. If your opponent is still determined to attack after this, employ whatever tactic, withdrawal, parley, doing nothing, deception, gives you the pause you need, then return to leading them. The overall goal is restoring harmony and disarming your opponent's attack. You are not defeating them, merely giving them the chance to see things in a new way. Here's a few examples of redirecting the focus of the attacker away from you after the initial pause. The pause means your opponent is off balance and is processing what they have just heard. Here are some examples of direction in the Shakespeare Authorship issue. Let's look at the evidence, shall we? What do you think of getting historians involved in the debate? Let's put aside our differences and see where we have some common ground. If you want, we can sit down and figure out between us what makes for good evidence. Let us take stock of the basic issue at hand, then work from there. Two, focus on what the attacker needs. Here are some examples of focusing on their needs. I know that you would love to know the inside story of the author better. I get that you want better comprehension of the canon. How would you go about doing that? Let's find a way to get a better understanding of what we have, the writing. I feel that you want to get a stronger grasp of the writing. I believe I have a way to make your teaching or understanding of the works more insightful. You are focusing on what the attacker needs. Three, don't take the attack personally if it really isn't. Here are some examples of objectifying the issue. We should put focus on what we both know is there, the canon. I get that you are upset with my doubts, but believe me, it is based not on animosity, but evidence. Let us take another look at what X play gives us for evidence. Choose whatever writing will work. I would rather pay attention to the works, just like you would. Finally, we should compare notes on this so we know where we are both coming from. If your opponent is still determined to attack after this, employ whatever tactic gives you the pause you need. Then return to leading them. Here are some examples of each tactic. Withdrawal. I would love to explore this with you further since you have many important points to make. Let us set up another time to explore the issue in more depth after we have prepared more. Parley. Please clarify your position for me so I can understand you better. Doing nothing. Be silent. Wait until their initial anger is spent. Deception. You will have to excuse me as I have an appointment that cannot wait. We can talk about this later when we both have more time. Contact me to set up a mutually agreeable place and time. This last thing puts the ball game back in their park. In other words, that puts control back in their hands, and if they are really sincere about getting through this and solving the problem, they will probably contact you. Remember about leading. Redirect the focus of the attacker away from you after the initial pause to the problem at hand. Focus on what the attacker needs. Don't take the attack personally if it really isn't. If your opponent is still determined to attack after this, employ whatever tactic, withdrawal, parley, doing nothing, deception, gives you the pause you need, then return to leading them. The overall goal is restoring harmony and disarming your opponent's attack. You are not defeating them, merely giving them the chance to see things in a new way. What Ikey does is it disarms the opponent. It places the control in your hands without needing to sacrifice your opponent. It includes the opponent in what is going on by the implementation of we statements. You use we statements. We can get through this. We can understand things better. We can understand each other better. Both of you leave without feeling either defeated or like a bully, though there are some people, granted, who would like to feel like a bully, but they are one of the misperceivers. It restores the harmony you had with someone who previously may not have been an opponent. The parking space issue. That is a good example. If you practice Ikey and confluence and lead them. The parking space issue will not be magnified, it will not escalate, and you both can go on with your day. It helps you both see the other's perspective better. Ikey ideally means neither of you should remain opponents after the encounter. Parking space issue. Well, it's a parking space. It's not a career. It's not somebody attacking you with a knife. It's just a parking space. The underlying philosophy of Aikido in everyday life, giving in to get your way, is comprised of 4 things. And we can use those 4 things in our daily life and also in discussing the authorship game. First, there is nothing wrong with winning, provided that what you are winning is a contest. The Shakespeare Authorship game may seem like a contest at some time, but it really isn't. Stop seeing everything as a contest, which by definition must have a winner and a loser. You are not going to be right all of the time, neither is your opponent. Not every contest is a zero-sum game, which requires a winner and a loser. You're not going to win if you've defeated your opponent utterly and they feel absolutely devastated. But you're not also going to feel good about it either. And remember that conflict simply is. Even if you agree with some people on 98% of the things that you're talking about, that 2% you're going to disagree with. Thank you for watching. Stay safe.